Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to another new episode of Life Say a Bit with Larry Mullins. I'm your host. Guess who? Yep, Larry Mullins. So corny. Anyways, got a really good episode for you today. Before I talk about it, first, if you happen to be watching the podcast on YouTube, please do me a favor and click the like button. Click the subscribe button. I need your subscriptions. And leave a comment if you feel so inclined. And also click that little bell so you can be notified when I upload new podcast episodes. If you want to be notified about that, that is. If you're listening on Spotify, click the follow button. Lastly, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave me a rating and write a review. It could be a one sentence review. Every little bit helps. Feedback helps, and I appreciate the support more than you know, and I'll continue saying that every week. This week, my guest is Ben Freeberg. He's honestly an incredibly hilarious guy, and what makes him special is he's a cancer survivor. When we get into the interview, you'll hear it's talked about he's super down to earth, and we talked about how he used his cancer to how he how do I word this? How he used his cancer to craft it into a joke. And now cancer, let me be clear. Cancer is totally not a laughing matter at all. It's very serious. We all know someone who has lost their lives to cancer or someone who currently has cancer. I know I've had at least 3 members of my family die of cancer. It's nothing to joke about. I've always been a firm believer of, whenever something negative happens, you gotta find the positive in every negative. And Ben is in no way saying that his cancer was a laughing matter, but he turned it into comedy because it's something he went through. He is cancer free, FYI, which is amazing. But he talks about how he used his specific personal experience to find the positive in it and how he could turn parts of it into comedy. And it works well. And he's doing good work. He's joining a charity organization that's focused on bringing comedy specifically to cancer patients because everyone needs to laugh, especially if you're going through something as painful as cancer. You can go to crackupcancer.com, which is coming soon. And you can also go to hope4art.org. Those are the organizations he's a part of that's focused on bringing comedy to cancer patients, which I think is a very, very important cause. It was a great chat. So I'm done rambling. Allow me to introduce Ben Freeberg. I love Christmas. So, I'm not to be all corny. It's my favorite time of the year. Do you do stand-up like part-time or?
Yeah. So I was actually, someone just asked how many. I think I'm at about 200 shows in the past 3 years. And then quite a few online during this whole pandemic thing. But it is not my full-time job.
That's cool. It's still 200. That's a good number, I'd say.
Yeah, it's enough to learn, to have a few different sets to pull back on, and yeah.
So, like, what inspired you to? This is kind of like a corny, generic question, but like, what inspired you to want to do that?
Why I figured you'd appreciate it was because of how we first met during the show that I was at with Mark Normand, where about a little over 3 years ago, maybe 4 now, I was at a show in New York City at the Slipper Room, this like hole-in-the-wall place, and Mark Normand, who I'd never heard of, came on stage, was supposed to do a 5-minute set, ended up going for 20, and for 20 minutes had the whole crowd cackling. It was just, it was the most impressive thing I had seen, and I left the show. I was like, I have to do that. And so I spent the next few months just reading and watching everything I could find on stand-up comedy theory, on how the greats write, on, reading everything Jerry Seinfeld has to say and everything else, and just started writing, and then got to the point where I was like, all right, this has to be 5 minutes worth of material, and got on stage.
That's awesome. Like, yeah, growing up, like I've always like liked watching like the huge comics like Seinfeld or George Carlin or Dave Chappelle, like the huge guys.
Yep.
And it wasn't until like the pandemic hit, the end of the world, that I was turned on to Mark's podcast, and then I fell in love with him, and then like I just went down a wormhole, kind of like if you're on like how I discover new bands, because I love music too. It'll be like listeners of this artist also liked, and I just kind of went down like a wormhole, like this person mentioned this person, and I just, and now it's like not like 90% of what I listen to are little known comics, or I mean they're probably big in the comedy world, but like just a random person out on the street, they would know who Seinfeld is, like they would know who Dave Chappelle is, but they might not know who, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And then I saw, I got tickets to that Zoom show. I was like, let me see what this is all about, because I've heard other comics like talking about them, and I was like, this is interesting. And I just know I can't remember the exact joke, but I know you had me laughing, and it sounds horrible, but sounds horrible that I was laughing about this, but I'm hoping it was just a joke fully, but I believe it was about testicular cancer.
Yeah, it's very real. Yes, it is one of my favorite sets. So I had started comedy before I was diagnosed. And then while I was going through it,
I laughed at that. Let me just
no, that's literally, that is the entire point of doing it in a comedy show, to try to bring light and some humor into something that sucks and is serious. And it's been that set, which has changed quite a few times over the past few years, but that set has been the one that I've gotten the most feedback stories on, of people sharing it with their friends or family going through it, and just kind of everyone going through cancer needs a laugh. And it just makes it a little bit easier. I'm actually working on the side, quick mini plug. It's called Cracked Up Cancer, and we're bringing stand-up comedy to cancer patients. So working with a few guys, we're launching around hopefully the time this episode airs, and we're partnering with a few different cancer hospitals to just make it easier for people when they're sitting there getting their chemo, to laugh for at least 5 minutes.
That's amazing. Man, I'm trying not to be brought to tears here. Like we've all known I think we've all known people that either have cancer or have lost their lives from it.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, like I know I've in the past, like a while ago, like I would occasionally just donate small amounts to like St. Jude's, because like nobody should have cancer, period, but especially a child.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just, it's rough. And I have a good friend who lost her dad to cancer. Two of my aunts died of lung cancer. My grandfather had lung cancer. Like it's the devil.
Yeah. It really is.
When you said that joke, I was like, I laughed, and I'm like, wait, did he really go through that? I was like, oh my God.
Nice. I'm glad it came across in both those ways. But that was Larry, it's so funny. So the most difficult set I've ever written and performed was it was a little over a month ago. I did the annual fundraiser for Hope ATRT. So it's a rare form of children's cancer, with a very low success rate. Everyone listening should go check out their page. It's an amazing, amazing story and an amazing cause. And I had to do a 10-minute G-rated set for kids and their parents around the theme of cancer. And that was, it ended up being one of the most amazing nights, and I got to meet the families and hear their stories. But writing that set was not easy. And if you were to ask me like 4 years ago when I started, if I was going to be in that situation, it would have been quite shocking.
Yeah, I definitely don't talk G-rated, not even PG. Like, I don't, man, that had to have been incredibly difficult.
Exactly. So it was quite fun.
Like, I think that's kind of my cousin and I are really close. Like, I think it's nice that you can take something serious and turn it into something funny. That sounds messed up, but I think it's good to like find, like, I guess the positive in every negative, and just the way you turned it into a joke. Like, I thought it was hilarious. I mean, I laughed. I mean, like, whenever I'm clumsy, but anyways, like, I've never been like seriously injured or anything, but whenever I get hurt or something, I try to laugh about it, or I try to make a joke about it or something.
Right. And that's it's funny you say that. So that is, I think, it was one of the first things I learned reading about how Seinfeld approaches comedy. And I hope I'm not misquoting him, but essentially it was around the idea that it's whenever he saw, heard, read something that exhibits a really strong emotion, you write that down because something is real there and you could turn it into comedy. So it's not just when you hear something funny, but when you hear something that makes you really confused, or something that's really sad, or just happy, or something that does something to you, if you write that down, there has to be something funny you can make out of that, and you just find the funny within it. And that kind of changed my approach and why I was able to transition to speaking about some of the stuff like cancer, because it's also not talking about, like, you go on stage at a New York City comedy club and it's 10 people in a row talking about dating and how tough it is dating or how funny it is dating. And that's fun and that's funny. And some people do it in a unique way. But if you could, do something that kind of has the audience stopping talking to each other, or stop, you're in different clubs with drunk people, right? And if you can kind of get them shocked in some way, and then those real laughs definitely hit different.
And I bet they'd be talking like, wait, was he being real? Like, did he really go through that? Like, like you said, causing conversation.
Yes. And there's some people that have gotten mad. I've had 2 people come up to me after shows, furious about how I could possibly joke about something like that when I haven't gone through it. And then I tell them that I went through it, and
they're like,
they get madder because now they're wrong and offended. So that's always fun. So yeah, it definitely makes for some fun experiences.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, and with people getting offended so easily, I can't even imagine. Like,
oh, it's exhausting. Imagine getting offended by everything, thinking everything's about you in an attack.
Yeah. Like, I tend to like, I don't like when, say, a comic is like just dirty 100% of the time. I like a mix of everything. Right. And I like darker stuff, like the more like, oh, did they just make a joke about that? But that makes me laugh even more.
Right.
Just because it's so messed up, and like, people, like, you came to watch comedy, like, expect anything, or at least, like, do some research before you go, because I'm not gonna be all like, oh, no. Like, at the end of September, I went to see Mark, and I live in Virginia. I live about 30 minutes south of DC. And we went to this draft house in Arlington, and it was indoors. So they had like group seats, or like groups of 2, like spread apart by tables.
Yeah.
And I go with my cousin, and, I'm not gay, but I know gay people. And Mark asks, any gays in the audience? My cousin's like, right here, and points to me. It's like, hey, but it's like, I didn't get embarrassed because, like, you're at a comedy show,
right.
What I mean? And like, and I just love, like, when I hear just like the edge of just like when that joke, for what is that stuck with me. Maybe it's because of the cancer, and that sounds messed up, but that stuck with me. I knew the topic, and I'm just like, whoa, that's deep. That's like a joke about cancer, but I laughed like hysterically.
Yeah. And that's awesome.
Like, how did, like, I mean, did you just like come up with that like really quick? Because I know like a lot of it's got to be just based on, a lot of it in general is just real life experiences, and you just kind of like tweak something, or just could just be simply how you tell
Totally.
the story. Or
Totally. So there was one moment where I was talking to the doctor, and he was telling me about, okay, how my life is gonna change for a few months and everything else, and how the biggest thing was that I was gonna have to follow what's called a pregnant woman diet. And that, him saying that to me as a young 24-year-old guy, I was like, if this isn't a sign that I have to write a comedy set about this, then there's nothing that's going to get me there. And then I literally, once they left, I took out paper, and I remember like writing the first like few bits about it. And then once I changed that mindset, and started looking for different things like that within that experience, it just flows out. So it's been that was definitely like the tipping point, and then you just talk to people, and it's the same way you work on any set.
I imagine being told by a doctor, yeah, I need you to follow a pregnant woman's diet. I mean, I would have giggled. I'd have been like, what are you talking about?
It was legit. My first reaction was, that's funny. Yeah,
that's that's, I don't know, like I believe you, when you mentioned, like, I think you, and I don't want to, I butcher everything if I try to repeat something, but I think you mentioned something about like putting in half the effort or something.
Putting in, sorry?
In the joke, I think you mentioned something about putting in half the effort or something along those lines. And
I do.
And that's,
it's about it was like a different take on the one ball piece of testicular cancer.
Yeah.
Where it ends up being that it's, honestly, the good news is that it's cut down on my shower time by 50%.
That's,
and
yeah,
that hits close to home for the guys. And then there have just been so many times where you see the girls kind of laugh and then look at the guys and being like, they like kind of get, and then again, it like spurs that conversation. And then I've just had so many people reach out after being like, yeah, like, there's so many times where I'm like in the shower, like doing it really quickly, and realize like, yeah, that's the only thing I really focus on. And yeah, it can take half the time. So those are the best, or the jokes that kind of hit 5, 6, 7 times over the next few weeks as you're experiencing them.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've never, I haven't been through anything like that, but I was, I was engaged briefly, and it didn't work out. I'll leave it at that. But when it came time for us to make that step, meaning to go from, let me use high school terms, to go from third base to to home base, she's like, oh, well, yeah, I want you, have you ever been tested? And I was like, actually, no. And she was like, yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, okay, fine. Like, for you, because I was not like psycho, but I was basically obsessed with her. I was like, I'm not lucky with girls. I'm always put in the friend zone. Like, right. I've had like 4 girlfriends my entire life, and I was like, oh, I just took a gamble and I started talking to her. And but I went to my doctor, and I was like, yeah. And he's like, he's like, you look like you want to ask me something. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, and because I went for just my regular yearly full-blown physical, like where they check your reflexes, your blood pressure, everything. And I said, so I'm in a new relationship. And I said, I kind of want you to test me for everything. And that's literally how I said it. And I was like, oh my God, I was so nervous. And, but I got the results back and it was all negative. I was like, oh, thank God. But like, I was even,
which is the reason why we're doing the podcast, so you can let people know in a broad form.
Yeah, maybe in a broad form. Yeah, but it's like one of those things. Like I was scared. I was scared to even ask when it comes to something like that, like anything involving like the body. I'm insecure about in general, and like just having to be like, oh, they have to take that much more blood, and I gotta be all uncomfortable, and I don't like needles. And before the whole pandemic happened, and like, because obviously you've done stand up in actual clubs and stuff, like how, like, What's your opinion of like the whole Zoom thing?
Yeah, it's not good enough. They've worked on it. I think the show you came to was one of, I think, the best ones, just because it started getting to the point after a few months where, like, actually, you know what, we should not be muting the audience, because the first few shows I did, you are literally talking to people's names. No one was on video, and everyone was off mute. And the whole point, not the whole point, but a big part of the excitement for doing stand-up sets at clubs is that you get real-time feedback. Like, it's fun. Like, you spend weeks working on a few jokes, and then you get to say them to a group of people and find out immediately whether or not it's funny. And then there's sometimes things hit that you didn't even know was funny, and that's like the fun art part of it. And you didn't get any of that for the first few months of people doing Zoom shows. But then I think that was the biggest change that seemed counterintuitive. But I mean, personally, I'm pumped to get back to an indoor basement club with people drinking and having a good time.
Yeah, like when I joined that, I was like, what do I do? I'm like, okay, I guess I just sit here. And I'm like, look,
Exactly.
and I'm looking at my laptop screen, and then I'm like, okay. And then the host was like, yeah, unmute yours. I was like, oh, so I hit unmute.
Yeah.
And there was like everybody in there wasn't unmuted, but a decent amount were.
Enough so that you knew what was hitting, which was good.
And I was like, well, I'm gonna laugh, and like said I was brave because I was the first person that clicked unmute. And I was like, well, if I were doing this, I would. If I were doing this, I'd want to hear people laughing.
Exactly.
You know, I can't imagine just seeing like a black square and like you don't hear anything, you don't see anything. I couldn't.
Yeah, and if it turns into heckling, you have the power to mute the heckler. Like, what's the downside, sort of thing. But it's I mean, it's a great time to launch a podcast. What was behind your launching it?
Well, it's just, I mean, boredom, honestly. I wanted to start one for a while, but I was like, well, if I start one with just me, I'm like, what the hell am I going to talk about? Like, and I'm just like, I don't, and I've gotten hooked getting into all these other comics. I've been watching other podcasts because I prefer to watch them because I like seeing facial reactions, and I like, that's just more personal to me, in my opinion. And I'm like, man, everybody, because like all these other ones, like they're comedians hosting and interviewing other comedians. And I was like, I wonder if I could start one where I just, as a fan of the stuff, interview, so and then I'm like, well, let me just start messaging people and see what happens. But yeah, it's been going good. I'm like, man, I hope I don't run out of, I hope I don't run out of people to ask. I don't know, that's not going to happen, but I'm certainly
totally. Yeah, it came across. By the way, you reached out, and then the first few you've done, it's awesome. It's real effort and time, and it's like one of those things, right, where you have to be pumped enough to be doing it that if no one listens, it's still a fun way to spend time and meet people, which is also like, that was what got me through the first few shows of stand-up. Like, you get on stage, and it's amazing, right? Being on stage and getting those laughs and working on the writing, but you're also hanging out with other comics. Like, it's just such a different group of people than you hang out with in your general, work day to day and your friends. And it's just fun people.
So do you have any special plans for the holiday?
No, been in the mountains in Colorado. And then I think clubs are going to start opening up sooner here. I think one of the places right by me is going to start doing an open mic again soon. So that might be my first wedge in back into the real live scene. But hanging here for a bit. So it's been all good.
Are you in Aspen?
I am in Avon, Colorado, right next to Beaver Creek, Vail, some of the mountains.
Is Aspen in Colorado?
It is.
I was about to feel really really stupid.
No, it's a very bougie version of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I've seen the ski lift stuff, and I was like, oh, he's skiing somewhere. He's skiing, and I instantly thought of Dumb and Dumber.
Oh yeah.
where they're that just made me thought of that. I'm like, oh, and I never really. Maybe I should have known where that was, but that looks like a lot of fun. That's something I'd like to do one day.
No, it's been awesome, and yeah, keeping the comedy muscle going with things like your podcast and just anywhere where you could share the story, get people excited. I mean, what I love about what you're doing is I think that the way you're going about this podcast, to me, I think is hopefully very inspiring to comics who want to start out or maybe don't want to do it on a stage and want to do it through a different medium. But I think if there's any way to inspire a few people to get on stage or to write and to share their art in whatever way it is, writing wise or just speaking audio, I think we could always use more of that. So, and it's also like no one has ever. I've gotten quite a few people to go up on stage and try out sets, and a bunch of people write jokes and shoot them over, and I've never had someone come to me after and be like, that was a waste of time. It's every single time wow, that was one of the most memorable days ever. And if they don't catch like the bug from going on stage, they are sharing their work and writing in some other way that just they didn't before. So I think what you're doing through this platform is hopefully going to inspire some more of that.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I know it's going to be a while. It's still going to be considered, I guess, brand new for a while, and I'm just going to have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And then eventually maybe like
that's an opportunity.
The listeners will just continue to grow. I mean, these things take time. I just gotta keep moving forward and just keep.
Totally. So Hope ATRT is the charity I mentioned. I don't know. I actually do not remember what the other plug. Oh, Cracked Up Cancer. We don't have. We're not live yet, but it will be soon. It's a comedy benefit, normally in Florida, and we're gonna bring it online. So those are the few.
Anything I can do to help?
No, I think this is awesome. If you hear of any really kind of unique online shows during this time, or hear of any spots that are starting to really open back up, it's the big thing. It's just getting stage time in front of cool audiences. So that's the main goal. That's been a little bit tougher than just hitting 3 clubs in a night in the West Village in New York.
This was fun. I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, of course, Larry. This is awesome that you're working on it.
Have a good one.
Chat to you, man.
Please follow the podcast on all social media at Life's a Bit Pod. If you're listening, please rate and write a review. If you're watching, please like, comment, and subscribe. New episodes every Friday. And remember, it's okay to laugh.